Hello. This week we are going to talk about human settlements, both the urban sector and the rural sector, and how we can manage our infrastructure, our industry, our ability to prepare for climate change. So let's get into it. First, we are going to focus on the urban sector or the cities. It'll help if I share my screen. All right, share screen, and here we go. So human settlements, industry, and infrastructure, focusing on human areas or on urban areas. So first of all, I want you to think to yourself, is Brunswick urban or rural? Are we more city or are we more out in the middle of nowhere? Right? Now, you might think to yourself, we have a lot of agriculture around here. We have a lot of forest, a lot of croplands around here, but we are very much urban. So rural areas comprise open country and settlements with fewer than 2,500 residents. That's actually a very, very small number of residents. For comparison, here in Brunswick, we have over 16,000 people. So we are definitely in the urban part of, right, how we split up the country. And we are in an urbanizing world, right? So in 2008, for the very first time in history, more than half of the world's population was living in urban centers, and this proportion continues to grow. So in these images, it's showing you the 1950 population centers where the color and size of dot represent how many people live in those places. And you can see that projections for 2025 show way, way more cities with more people living in them. So 3/4 of the world's urban population and most of its largest cities are now in low and middle income nations. So if you remember from class, we said that most people now live in middle income nations. Well, these nations are getting a lot more cities. Okay. So the IPCC reports came to a few key conclusions about this topic. The first is that adaptive capacity of any city depends on three things. First, the quality and coverage of infrastructure and infrasources, or infrastructure and sources, right? So just how much do we already have? Finally, the capacities for investments and land use management. So how can we invest in and manage what we already have? And then finally, the degree to which buildings and infrastructure meet health and safety standards. So not only what do we have, but how good is it? There's little of this capacity foundation in most low-income urban centers and in many middle-income nations. So here in the US, we are very fortunate to mostly have these three things, so to have a strong capacity to adapt. Key conclusion number 2 from the IPCC report is that it's important for city and municipal governments to immediately, that word's important, immediately incorporate climate change adaptation into their development plans and policies and infrastructure investments. So this is not something that we are thinking about for the future. For far too long, we thought of climate change as a future thing. It is happening now, so we need to immediately address it. This is not to diminish the key role of other actors, right? I'm not saying it's solely on the back of the city and municipal governments. But if the city and municipal governments do not provide the scaffolding, this regulatory framework within which the stakeholders, all other stakeholders like you and me, can contribute and collaborate, then our efforts will fail, right? So the governments play a very key role in this. So for the rest of the talk, we're going to focus on these governments.